Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation. As you can see here, the title is Thinking Globally, Acting Locally, Implementing Engaging PBL in International Schools. My name's Sam Nelson, I am Digital Learning Coordinator and Spanish and French teacher at St Gilgen International School in Austria. I've been teaching Spanish and French for 17 years, primarily in the IB system. But I think one of the most transformative phases of my career was when I worked for Think Global School. If you haven't heard of Think Global School, it is a travelling international high school where the students and the staff change countries every term and they live and learn in their local communities there. TGS follows primarily a project-based learning approach. When I was working at Think Global School, I had the opportunity to design and accompany students on many projects, many of which led to memorable and profound experiences for our students. And as you can see here, when we were in Morocco, we were living in Rabat and we went down to Essaouira and we did a marquetry project where they were learning from local artisans. And another project we ran was when we did a wilderness first aid project in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where the students learned from a qualified wilderness first aid instructor and then they left that experience with an internationally recognised certificate in wilderness first aid. When you're bouncing around the world like that, it's quite easy to come up with inspiration for projects. I currently live in St Gilgen, which is in the Austrian Lake District. As you can see there, it's a really beautiful location. But of course, when you're living in one location and it's your home base, I think it's quite hard to think of inspiration for projects sometimes. And so I actually think it's still really important that we get out there and we do some more profound learning experiences and projects with our students. And because of that, I really endeavour to find those opportunities where I'm living. And that brings me onto the why for project-based learning. I would say that project-based learning helps students develop skills for living in a knowledge-based, highly technological society. And as most educators would accept, the old school model of passively learning facts and reciting them out of context is no longer sufficient to prepare students to survive in today's world. Solving highly complex problems, such as we do in PBL, requires that students have both fundamental skills, reading, writing and maths for instance, and 21st century skills such as teamwork, problem solving, time management and using high-tech tools. And with this combination of skills, students can become directors and managers of their own learning process, guided and mentored by a skilled teacher. When we're setting up PBL experiences for our students, I think it's really important that we have some success criteria for those projects in mind. And this graphic that I'm showing here, I found on a website called pblworks.org, and I think it's a really good model for us to use when we're designing projects for our students. As you can see in the middle there, we've got the learning goals, we've got the key knowledge, the understanding and the success skills, and around the outside there we've got the 7 essential project design elements, and I think they're really, really useful. So authenticity, we always talk about authenticity as educators, and I think that's really important when we're designing a project like this. It should be real, it shouldn't just be something that we find in a textbook. Student voice and choice, very important of course, right? That students have a say in their own learning process. And other elements such as reflection, critique and revision, they're all just hallmarks of really good teaching and learning, aren't they? And of course, when we're talking about PBL, we're talking about sustained inquiry. We're not just talking about a one-off lesson where we do some exercises out of a textbook. We're talking about something they can really get their teeth into. And I also think that when we work in international schools, such as I do, we should really try and get some kind of international context in there to allow our students to think outside of the box and broaden their horizons to get outside of the classroom a little bit. The initial idea for this project came up from the St Gilgen Seilbahn. We're lucky enough in St Gilgen that we've got a lake and we've got a mountain right in the village there. And the mountain is called the Svelforhorn. And the Seilbahn is the German for cable car. The 1950s era cable car was going out of commission and they were building a new one, and I thought it would be a really good idea for our students to be some of the first people to test the cable car and to write some kind of report or something about it for their Spanish project. This project was also born out of a lack of authentic Spanish and French resources about our local area, and I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to be able to produce something that could be a real life a support document, let's say, for Spanish-speaking tourists to the village. Objective-wise, obviously I wanted them to practice their language skills in and out of the classroom. I wanted them to work on their teamwork, and I also wanted them to learn some new skills such as storyboarding, getting good quality audio and video, and maybe some video editing at the end. So what I'd like to do now is just play the video for you, and as I play it, I'd like you to have a look at the gold standard PBL on the left-hand side there, and I want you to decide whether you think this was a successful project or not. A little bit of a spoiler for you, I think it was, but I hope you agree. I'm going to play the video now, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hola y bienvenidos a las noticias de este GIS. Soy Albion.
Y yo soy Stephanie y estamos aquí para informarles sobre el nuevo teleférico en St. Gilgen.
Sí, como ustedes han visto, finalmente se abre el nuevo teleférico que ha estado en construcción durante mucho tiempo.
Tenemos un adelanto del nuevo teleférico para ustedes.
Espera un momento, Steph. Les daremos a los turistas datos sobre la historia del teleférico.
Oh sí, y vamos a viajar en el teleférico también, claro.
Fe, háblanos sobre la historia del teleférico, por favor.
El viejo teleférico se abrió en 1957 y en 2019 se cerró. En esta vez, el teleférico transportaba 8,5 millones de personas. Las góndolas viejas son mucho más pequeñas. El viejo teleférico tenía 38 góndolas con 4 asientos cada uno. El tiempo de conducción fue 16,2 minutos.
Hola, yo soy Leona. Estoy enfrente del ayuntamiento y voy a entrevistar al alcalde. Pero ¿por qué necesitamos un teleférico nuevo en este pueblo? Voy a preguntarle sobre la construcción y sus beneficios.
Ja, die neue Seilbahn wird sicher etwas dazu beitragen, dass der Tourismus weiterhin so gut geht, wie er schon seit Jahrzehnten ist. Und ja, jetzt ist eine moderne Seilbahn, es können mehr Leute auf den Berg gebracht werden und das ist sicher von Vorteil.
Comprar los billetes fue muy fácil. Un billete para subir y bajar cuesta 29 euros. También puedes comprar un billete para solo subir por 25 euros o de bajar por 18. También hay un billete para todo el año por 490. El teleférico está abierto de las 9 de la mañana a las 4 de la tarde.
Hola, soy yo otra vez. Esta vez yo estoy con Fi.
Vamos a hablar sobre las actividades que puedes hacer en la montaña.
En el verano puedes hacer senderismo y escalada.
Para el invierno puedes esquiar, esquí nórdico, zapato de esquí, esquí de fondo y mucho más.
Para los pequeños se puede hacer un muñeco de nieve y se puede ir en trineo en una colina.
Para ambas estaciones puedes tomar un café o té en el restaurante y puedes saltar de la montaña con un paracaídas.
Al final del día, cuando están cansados, puedes comer muy rico.
Ahora vamos a cambiar a Albion, que les dice cómo está la comida.
Esa es mi comida. He pedido la pasta con pesto y queso y unas salchichas con pan.
Mi comida está aquí. Estoy tomando un Red Bull frío y una ensalada simple.
Aquí yo tengo mi comida. Esto es una comida típica de Austria. Es un poco como la pasta. Parece muy bien.
¡Salud!
Espero que ustedes hayan disfrutado el episodio de hoy.
Muchas gracias al personal del teleférico y del restaurante. Gracias por ver las noticias de este GIS.
Adiós.
Adiós.
Okay, so that was the Spanish Seilbahn project, and I just want to have a little think now whether we think it was a successful project or not. Was it a challenging problem? I think it was definitely challenging for the students there, in no small part because it's quite a big project. It has many disparate elements that they needed to plan and put together at the end in one big product, if you like. Also, they found other elements such as speaking to the local mayor, organising the actual trip up on the cable car. They found all of that quite challenging because it was something they'd never had to do before. So I would say it most definitely was a challenging problem. It was a sustained inquiry as well. This took place over the course of about 2 months, and we dedicated a lot of lesson time to it. So I would say it most definitely was sustained inquiry as well. As for authenticity, I think it definitely was authentic. As I said, we had interviews with the local people, and it was a real life problem. It was an actual problem that we wanted to solve. So that was a big tick there as well. Student voice and choice, absolutely. They had a say on what they were going to do next. We had lots of phases, such as when we were going up on the cable car and doing that actual visit at the end there, where they had to plan what they were going to do and when. So they decided where they would film, what we would film, and in which order that would make sense. So I would say they definitely had some voice and choice. Of course, I had to help them with some of that because they were making some decisions that possibly wouldn't have made sense, and some of which were a little bit dangerous. They wanted to film right at the edge of a cliff, and so obviously I had to tell them not to do that. So I would say they did have some voice and choice. Reflection, absolutely. We had different reflection points at different points in the project, and I gave them the opportunity to critique their own work and to revise that. And I think that's really important for any project that we run with our students. So I would say we ticked both of those. And as for whether it's a public product, it absolutely is public. It's on our school YouTube channel now. I think it's had about 1,000 views, so it's done pretty well for a school project, I would say, and it's actually something that people are really looking at and using. So I would say that we've ticked that one as well. So if I do say so myself, I think it was a successful project. I'm sure many of you have got lots of tips for successful project-based learning, and I'd love to speak to you afterwards about that. If you fancy catching up with me and we can chew the fat about PBL, as I said, it's something that I am really passionate about and I really enjoy teaching. So a few tips that came to mind when I was planning this were as follows. Firstly, keep your ear to the ground, because there's always something going on in the local community. Be it construction projects, social projects, there's always something that we can incorporate into our teaching practice, and I think that's really important that we do that. Next is to make it personalised. That was quite a small class. It was actually only 4 students, so I was very fortunate there that I knew them really, really well, and I knew that this was something that would work really well for that group. But of course, it may not work for other groups, so we really need to have those discussions with our students and get to know them, I think, before we plan such a big project as this. Making it accessible, of course. This group had been learning Spanish for in the region of 3 to 4 years, and I think that if it was a beginners group, it probably wouldn't have been the right project for them. It would have been far too challenging, and I wouldn't have been able to achieve those objectives with them. So know your group, really, right? That's really key for a project like this. And the last one, and probably the most important, is to make it fun, because as we all know, if students are having a good time, then they're learning more. And I think that in this project, the students really did have a good time, and I think they really got a lot out of it. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. And as I said, I'm more than happy to have a little chat with you afterwards about some PBL ideas. And I want to get more tips, actually, for a good PBL. So thank you very much for your time.